Sin City, more like Win City, am I right? The Boston Bruins shook off a Friday night loss to the Arizona Coyotes by beating Bruce Cassidy's Vegas Golden Knights in Nevada on Sunday. We're going to talk about that game, Linus Ullmark's ongoing dominance, and update the Zdeno Chara Vancouver Canucks story here on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Monday, December 12th. Mondays just hit different, coming off a Boston Bruins win. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode, and thank you for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube. If you're on Twitter, Instagram, you can find the podcast at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my dad jokes and hockey tweets at Ian C. McLaren. All right, the Bruins lost on Friday night to the Arizona Coyotes in very odd fashion, with that icing call being waved off at the last second. Lawson Crouse put the puck in the back of the net. I talked about it on a special Saturday bonus episode that you can go back and listen to. The Bruins were very adamant about not losing 2 games in a row. And Taylor Hall said they needed a reset. It was a tough ending to the game in Arizona, a game they played pretty well, and it was important to have a short memory. Vegas is a building that's not easy to play in, a team that has motivation to beat them, Bruce Cassidy's old club. We know last week when Vegas beat the Bruins in a shootout, Bruce Cassidy said he had put money on the board for his players and had motivated them extra. Practice on Saturday, head coach Jim Montgomery said they want to win every series against every team this year, and for the Bruins to do that, they had to get a regulation win, and that's exactly what they did last night. They were outshot 31-27. Vegas scored on their first shot of the game, a Mark Stone power play goal, but then the Bruins took over from there with goals from Patrice Bergeron in the second period to tie it up. Then Jake DeBrusk fittingly scored the go-ahead goal in the second period off a beautiful feed from Pavel Zacha. And then Charlie Coyle iced it at about the halfway point of the third period with his 8th goal of the season. He's now quietly on pace for 24 goals on the season. Vegas came on strong in the late going, outshooting the Bruins 14-9 in the third period, but Boston held on thanks to Linus Ullmark, who we'll talk about here coming up in a few moments. 5-on-5, the Bruins had the majority of the shot attempts, as well as shots on goal. They had an edge in scoring chances, but Vegas did have more high danger chances, especially in the late going, as Linus Ullmark made some key saves in tight. Now, Vegas got 4 power play chances compared to 2 for the Bruins, so the numbers skewed a bit in their favor at in all situations. Vegas had more shot attempts, more shots, more scoring chances, 15-6 in all situations, and had the edge in expected goals at 3.12 compared to 2.1 for the Bruins. And it was Linus Ullmark who came up huge for the Bruins in this one. Before we talk about Ullmark's performance and his Vezina Trophy contention, I should mention that David Krejci missed this one. He's considered day-to-day with a lower body issue. Pavel Zacha shifted to the middle and played with Taylor Hall, David Pastrnak to start the game. He had 4 hits, a shot on goal, picked up that beautiful assist on Jake DeBrusk's game winner in about 18 minutes of ice time. He's a natural center. That's what he was drafted as. That's where he played to begin his career in New Jersey, at least. He said it was nice to get the chance to play there again. But wherever he plays, whatever his position is, he knows that his role is to make it easier for his line mates to get out there, play a full 200-foot game, earn the trust of the coaches, and put his best effort in. And that's exactly what he did with that beautiful pass over to Jake DeBrusk and playing pretty solidly in his own zone as well. Yeah. Great little game from Pavel Zacha. And, you know, the trade that Don Sweeney made with the New Jersey Devils to bring Zacha in was pretty savvy looking back. You know, it's we look back at last season, Eric Howla was playing the second line center role. Pavel Zacha hasn't had to be there because of the presence of David Krejci, but in a pinch with Krejci out and or looking forward to next season, Pavel Zacha could very well find himself playing that role for the Boston Bruins, and we saw last night that he can do that with efficacy for sure. Taylor Hall led the way with 6 shots for the Bruins. He picked up an assist. I believe he now has something like 8 points over his past 6 games. After being held off the score sheet in Arizona, he continues his strong stretch of play. Derek Forbort with 5 hits, an assist. Clifton with 7 hits and an assist. That kind of shows you Vegas had the puck more than the Bruins, the fact that they are having all these hits. But Forbort especially had a very solid game defensively, a huge play in the third period to knock this puck off a Vegas stick and to make things easier for Linus Ullmark, who we'll talk about here coming up after the break. But first, a quick word about our sponsor today, Simply Safe. It's the holidays. A lot of you are probably watching Home Alone and reminded of the importance of home security around the holidays. Home should be where you and your family feel safest. This season, give yourself and your family the gift of peace and protection with the #1 rated home security system, Simply Safe. Right now, Simply Safe is offering Locked On Bruins listeners 40% off a new security system. Don't put this off. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real, so you can get higher priority police response. They're the top-rated Simply Safe app. You can stay in complete control of your system, arm or disarm it, unlock for a guest, access your camera, adjust system settings anytime, anywhere. Don't miss your chance to save big on our favorite security system. Get 40% off any new system at simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. There's simply no safe like Simply Safe. All right, Linus Ullmark with the win last night over the Vegas Golden Knights improved his season record to 16-1. He made back-to-back breakaway saves in the second period, turning away Ben Hutton and then denying William Carrier with a right pad stop. The save on Hutton came as he was coming out of the box, received a pass from Mark Stone, and a beautiful glove save made by Ullmark. He said he fired it in the spot where he thought he would shoot it. He has a good shot, but Ullmark was quick enough to get down on it there and kind of read it. He said he's just focusing on the next puck. That's the focus. Can't change what happened. Got to keep moving forward. He said after allowing the first shot of the night, Vegas is obviously a good team. He was expecting a tough game, but the Bruins defended well in front of him, kept them to the outside. I mean, that's kind of debatable. I said earlier their high danger chances were 15-6 in favor of the Golden Knights. So Ullmark trying to give a bit more credit to his defensemen than perhaps they earned. But, that's the mark of a solid team player as well. Even when they got those chances, he could see them well, was reading them well, a good team effort. He's now won 8 consecutive games, tying a career high that he set earlier this season. He said if you ask any goaltender if they win more than they lose, they will feel good about themselves. It goes for him as well. Take it day by day. Won this one. Good road trip overall, and looking forward to going home and preparing for Tuesday's game. Taylor Hall said he's such a stud. Awesome playing in front of him. He makes us feel comfortable, makes saves look easy, and he's a fun goalie to play in front of. At the moment, he belongs in the Vezina Trophy conversation without question. He leads the NHL in goals against average at 1.77. He leads the league in save percentage at 9.41. That is just unbelievable at the moment. And he also has 2 shutouts, which is one back of Connor Hellebuck and Ville Husso for the NHL lead. He's just playing fantastic at the moment. I know it's only December 12th. There's a lot of hockey to be played, but you can't deny that Linus Ullmark belongs in the Vezina Trophy conversation and right now should be a finalist for that award. You can say the same thing about Jim Montgomery. I know often head coach of the year, Vezina Trophy of the year, they go together. You need an exceptional goalie to win the most amount of games. Teams that win a lot of games usually have their coach up for head coach of the year. But it's not just that for the Bruins. It's their offense as well that has been revitalized under head coach Jim Montgomery. You just have to look at the fact that in seasons past, what was one of the big knocks on this team? Secondary scoring. Right now, Taylor Hall, second on the team in goals with 11. David Pastrnak leading the way with 19. But then you have Patrice Bergeron, Jake DeBrusk, David Krejci, Brad Marchand, Charlie Coyle's up there. Trent Frederick has 6 goals. Nick Foligno has 5 goals. Pavel Zacha, AJ Greer hitting the score sheet as well. Secondary scoring, not a problem with Jim Montgomery's Boston Bruins. And that's a huge reason why they are one of the top offensive teams in the NHL this season. In fact, they lead the NHL in goals per game, 3.89. And also lead the NHL goals allowed per game, 2.11. Players are responding to Jim Montgomery's system, and it's paying off right now. A couple weeks ago, I talked about how the Bruins were on the verge of entering a pretty difficult stretch in their season. There was a couple games against Colorado, a couple games against Vegas, Tampa, Carolina. How did they fare over that stretch? Well, they won both games against Tampa Bay in regulation. They beat the Carolina Hurricanes in overtime. Beat Colorado twice in regulation, albeit they're pretty banged up. They lost to Vegas in a shootout. Then beat Vegas last night in regulation. Lost to the Arizona Coyotes in regulation. That was the one game that seemed like it would have been a clear win. Unfortunately, they dropped that game. So they lost twice in regulation, once to Florida, once to Arizona. But again, beat Tampa twice in regulation, beat Colorado twice in regulation, beat Vegas, earned a point against them, and remain atop the NHL standings as we sit here just 2 weeks shy of the Christmas break. Of course, on tomorrow's episode, we will update the Atlantic Division power rankings, take a look at the Eastern Conference picture. But the Bruins, still the top team in the Atlantic, in the East, and overall sitting ahead of second place New Jersey, pulling away from Vegas as well after last night's win. Overall, a very solid effort for the Boston Bruins. I'm going to give Big Bear of the night to Ullmark for making those 30 saves on 31 shots and a couple huge ones to keep the Bruins in the game. If Hutton, for example, had scored on that breakaway, could have been a completely different story. But he stood tall, and credit to Jake DeBrusk for scoring the game-winning goal against his old coach, with whom there was some measure of contention. Not only that, but DeBrusk went out there and threw 6 hits and added a blocked shot. I can't remember DeBrusk ever throwing the body around that much, and I think he was extra motivated to show that he is putting in that effort every single night. All right, coming up after the break, I'm going to update the Zdeno Chara and the 2011 Vancouver Canucks situation. But first, this episode today is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from the World Cup of Soccer to nightly NHL action, NBA, football, esports even. They've got it all at betonline.net. They're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix in. You can head to their website today, pick up your phone, your tablet, download the app to learn more about BetOnline, where the game starts. So last week I told you about Zdeno Chara appearing on a podcast and claiming the Vancouver Canucks in 2011 were practicing lifting the cup and handing the cup off to each other after game 2, or after winning 2 games at least in Vancouver. The Bruins found out about these things and were like, F this, we're not going to allow this to happen. It just fueled us. Kevin Bieksa, who was a member of that team and who also works for Sportsnet, Hockey Night in Canada, refuted the story in a text to Sportsnet's Jeff Merrick. And then he went on the air on Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday to refute what he called one of the dumbest things he's ever heard. He said, quote, "I don't think I have to spend a whole lot of time discrediting that this didn't happen, because logistically it's impossible." He said, "I don't have to spend a lot of time," but then he went on and talked about it for a few minutes. Hockey Night in Canada dedicating 2-3 minutes of airtime to this story. He said, you think about all the media that's there covering the finals, all the competitiveness of trying to find some story different than the other person. Clearly, somebody would have reported about that or had a camera. He added, and this is a fair point, even Chara walks it back a little bit with his comments from we saw them in the garden to we heard to we believe we heard. What irked him the most was the lack of respect from Zdeno Chara. He said, originally I was upset to hear about it because it's a little bit of an attack on our character as a team and as an organization, but also our leadership group. You're talking about 3 first ballot Hall of Famers in the Sedins, Roberto Luongo. You're talking about Manny Malhotra, Dan Hamhuis himself. To think that we would allow something like that to happen, let alone participate in it, is disappointing coming from a guy like Chara. You would expect more and maybe a little bit more mutual respect that he wouldn't repeat a story like that. So that's insulting to us without fact-checking it or seeing it or witnessing it firsthand. The main emotion Bieksa had is disappointed in him. Couple things there. First of all, forget any mutual respect or giving them the benefit of the doubt. There was no love lost between the Vancouver Canucks and the Boston Bruins in that series and in the years following. There was the Aaron Rome hit on Nathan Horton. There was Alex Burrows biting Patrice Bergeron, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. There were so many more little things done along the way on both sides. Let's be honest. The Bruins were up to some shenanigans as well, and it was one of the most contentious Stanley Cup finals, if not the most contentious in recent memory. Whether or not Chara saw this or heard about it, or they created this myth in order to motivate the players, that's up for debate. It seems like there is some gray area there. I'm not sure that they actually saw this happen. And to Bieksa's point, he did walk it back a little bit by saying, we saw, we heard, we believe we heard, etc. But for Bieksa to come out and say he's disappointed that there's not this mutual respect, that it's insulting, whatever, man. The Canucks did not deserve the benefit of the doubt there. They were up to some shenanigans as well, and they would have used any motivation to get an edge over the Bruins. The fact is, the Bruins won in Game 7. Nathan Horton pouring the Garden Ice in Vancouver, and, there's no love lost between either of these sides. There's no mutual respect that was earned there. And you can go on Hockey Night in Canada and disparage Zdeno Chara. Chara can go on a podcast and tell his stories. At the end of the day, the Bruins won the cup. And that's really all that matters. That's it for today's episode, my friends. Thank you so much for taking some time to hang out this morning, making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. Please do subscribe if you are a new listener and finding it on your podcast feeds, Spotify, Apple, even on YouTube. Now, for your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available wherever you get podcasts. On tomorrow's show, we will preview tomorrow night's game against the New York Islanders, as well as update the Atlantic Division power rankings and bring you all the latest on the black and gold here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. I've got a meditating Yoda on my desk today as a reminder to breathe, Take it 1 hour at a time. And that's my advice to you. Namaste. Take care, friends.